I've really done myself over there. Do you ever get that when you haven't drunk like anything for like literally the whole day, and so you just need to then go and neck a full glass of water, and then you instantly regret it? Hello guys, what's happening? It is Matt here from Sophisticated Obsession, back with another fragrance video. I know that I have been focusing more on like the fashion side of things. Today, what we're gonna be doing is we are gonna be going back to the house of Labo. I just wanna say a huge thank you to all of the people that have been recently subscribing. And also, I wanna make a huge push because I am within sight of 3,000 subscribers. So now that that is out the way, let's get to the review. So the fragrance that I'm gonna be reviewing today is Labo's Another 13. With that being said, let's roll the B-roll. Enjoy that? I certainly did. I did actually a little bit of background information about one of the recent Labo fragrance reviews that I have done about Tea Noir. So if you haven't done that, definitely check that out, and I'll link it just above my head right now. In that video, I sort of talked a little bit about Labo as a company. Labo is a New York brand. It was founded in 2006 by Eddie Roshi, I want to say, and Fabrice Pinot. Their names are just up there. A few people pronounce Labo as Labo. I have actually looked into this, and it is Labo. That is how the French pronounce it. Labo as a company got taken over by the Estee Lauder group in 2014. However, that hasn't actually changed the fundamentals to this brand. These fragrances are made to order. That, I think, is definitely something that I really do appreciate from this brand. So first of all, let's go to the name, Another 13. This one is actually the exception to their naming rule. These are named after the predominant note in that fragrance. With quite a few of their fragrances, I do think that they have then taken more of a unique stance. You get like the opening, and then it suddenly goes, and it then sort of just goes into something very different, and you're a bit like, okay, I was definitely not anticipating it going here. And I think that a few people maybe get a little bit miffed by that, because they're a bit like, look, I've asked for neroli, I want neroli. In 2010, Labo was commissioned by Another magazine to then create a signature scent. Sarah Andelman, who was then, I believe she was running the Colette store, which is a Parisian boutique, which is now unfortunately closed. Sarah Andelman created the collaboration by pairing up Labo's creators with a guy called Jefferson Hack. The fragrance that they initially created, which was Another 13, there were only 500 bottles of these made. Also, 3 fragrances for Sarah Andelman that were then named after that store, Colette. Colette 19, 25, and 34. In 2017, the Colette store closed. However, shortly after, Another 13 then appeared on the fine fragrances section of Labo's store. Now, this originally was, in essence, a city exclusive. They are basically fragrances that you can only find in that store in that country. Now, if you are interested in more of the city exclusives, I did a fragrance review of all of those samples. I've got it above my head, so you can then obviously go and check those out. The 13 to this fragrance symbolizes 13 elements in this concoction. Anyway, the background out the way, let's get testing. Okay, first up, let's go to the head notes. So the notes of this are predominantly musk-based notes. Also in here is a synthetic element of ambroxan. This is predominantly found in well-known fragrances such as Dior Sauvage, although this smells nothing like Dior Sauvage. We also have in here ambrette seeds or musk mallow, and this is just another different musk that then adds more of a cozy, fruity, almost like baby powdery type of like vibes to it. I get like a card parchment type of smell. There is a sweetness, a fruitiness, almost like a pear-like sort of smell to this in the background. I really, really like that part to this fragrance. It's not heavy, it's really comforting and cozy. It's powdery, but I don't feel like it's very dry. It smells quite wet, which sounds really strange. I get kind of like a morning dew type of feel to this. There is a sharpness coming through that isn't so much of like a perfumer's alcohol sharpness, but more of a very sort of strong metallic scent that you get from the ambroxan. Oh God, I absolutely love this. This is definitely one of my favorite Le Labo fragrances, like without a doubt. Another thing that I really like about this is that there is a very subtle wood note going on underneath all of this. It almost gives off like an ISO-y super type of smell. This has been likened to Molecule 01 and Molecule 02. Molecule 01 being the ISO-y super with the sandalwood smell, but then Molecule 02 being more of the ambroxan type of smell. The only thing is, I find that this is more complex. I do own Molecule 01, but I find it's too simple. Whereas I think with this, there is a lot more complexity going on and it's very interesting. Okay, so that is the top notes. So I'm gonna leave this for around about half an hour so that we can then go into the mid notes. Okay, so it has been around about half an hour since I sprayed this. We've still got some sort of green elements here that I think was sort of coming from that sort of pear smell. The sweetness and almost like a citrusiness that I maybe got at the start has now died down. What I can now smell is more of a salty accord, like an ambergris type smell. I don't think this is real ambergris. This does have like a salty element here, which I think adds to the longevity of this fragrance. The musk is still so apparent. It's like you're burying your nose in a cloud. I am starting to get more of like a depth to this. It actually has very similar qualities to the Molecule 01 in the fact that you might not be able to smell it all the time, but everybody else can. It's still really, really strong. So I'm gonna leave it for another hour now so that we can then go well into the base notes. The base notes. The sweetness now has more or less subsided. You're maybe getting like a few sort of vanillic notes in the background, but it's very, very slight. You have still got more of like a green element coming through, which actually is really pleasant. It adds another element to this fragrance, so it's not so two-dimensional. The musk is doing its thing, it's projecting still, it's actually projecting really well. The interesting thing to this though is that although it projects really well, it isn't enormous. It's not like you are gonna have to worry about how many times you spray this. Obviously, you don't want to douse yourself in it, but I do think that you could be a little bit more liberal with your application of this. I genuinely think you could spray this quite a few times, like on your clothes, sort of like around you, and people would enjoy it rather than just being like, Jesus Christ, get the antidote. The amount of people that I have got asking me about this scent has actually been quite crazy. Certainly if I do a video on like my biggest compliment getters, this is going to be in the top 3. The ambroxan note, if I'm being honest, I don't get much of it. What I get though is like a floral element here as well. It's a little bit like jasmine. So anyway, those are the notes that I get from this fragrance. So now let's get into the rating. First of all, we come to the presentation. The presentation to Le Labo's, I love. The overall sort of aesthetic to these are fantastic. They're sort of in keeping with that look of a laboratory. Like, this does sort of look like a bit of a test tube. Plus, I love how they then personalize these things with then your own name and when it was bottled and who bottled it and where it was bottled, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Also to this, the atomizer, it yields a really nice amount of juice. So yes, it gets a point for its presentation. Next up, we come to the performance. The performance to this really is where this fragrance shines. For a fragrance that smells so light and airy, it lasts so long. If compliments are definitely what you seek, this is a fantastic fragrance. In terms of like the longevity, I think that it will last you the whole day. Probably by the end of the day, it is more of a skin scent, but overall, I can't fault it. It gets a point for its performance. Next up, versatility. So this is interesting because I was thinking about the seasons of when you would wear this fragrance. I kind of feel like this is a transitional fragrance. Autumn, spring, it is perfect. I would also say for like England's climate, where most of the time it is grey and raining, this suits it perfectly. The only times that it wouldn't work is high summer, and then also on the other side of things in the deep winter. In terms of where you could wear this scent as a casual scent, like just a daytime scent or just like your signature scent, I think it works perfectly for it. I also would say that it would work perfectly if you were then taking this into an office. The only time that I do not think that it would work though is maybe on a night out, but in terms of its versatility, I think it is absolutely fantastic, so I'm gonna give it a point. Next up, we have target audience. The target audience to all of Le Labo's fragrances are very much unisex. This is no exception. People might find this effeminate because it is light. I personally, actually smelling it, do not think that that is the case. The age is an interesting one. I kind of feel like this can be worn by somebody quite young. Middle age onto more mature years, I think probably would want to go for something a little bit more mature. So overall, I'm gonna give it a point for its target audience. And finally, we come to uniqueness. This is the one thing that lets it down because it is not unique. There are so many different fragrances out there that I think smell very similar to this. This, you could say, smells fairly generic. This maybe smells a little bit more basic to some of the other offerings from Le Labo. However, if that is the only point that I can actually deduct, then that surely must say something about this scent. So overall, that gives Another 13 a whopping 4 out of 5. Finally, we come to the price point of this. This is expensive, it is, but I do think that you get what you pay for in its artistry, but also in like the presentation and the process in which it goes to then get to your front door. So there we go, guys. That is my review. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you have found it useful, informative, and you haven't felt like I've just been rambling on forever. As always, please check us out on Instagram to see what we're getting up to on a day-to-day basis, and also hit that big subscribe button because it means the world. I want to get to 3,000 subscribers, guys, so let's make it happen. And that's everything. Hope you have an amazing day, whatever you are doing, and I'll see you in the next one. See you guys. Bye.